and welcome back to my channel. We have huge news today as President Biden just announced a new deal that he proposed to Congress for the next stimulus package. So let's discuss whether or not this includes the $1,400 stimulus check and what this means for seniors going forward. $1,400 stimulus check. But first, quick shout out to National Chocolate Day. So go out and get your favorite chocolate and let us know in the comments, what is your favorite type of chocolate? I know chocolate can be something that's pretty therapeutic, and these last couple of years have been so stressful. I know a little chocolate goes a long way in cheering you up. So, with that said, let's jump right into today's stimulus update. Now, this headline reads, Biden outlines plan to expand U.S. health programs as part of the next stimulus package. So, President Biden announced a new framework, a new deal for this stimulus package, and he went down to Congress and presented this in front of the House and the Senate. Now, what this means is that this is basically a new starting point for Democrats to negotiate and compromise on, right? So this is Biden announcing, hey, this is the framework that he wants. Now the House is going to have to say, all right, we're going to change this, we're going to remove this, we're going to add this, and then they're going to create their own framework that they're then going to take to the Senate. The Senate will do the same thing. Then most likely they'll have to pass it back to the House, where the House will have to approve it again, and then have it fully signed into law, right? So basically, President Biden is moving the goalpost because the $3.5 trillion stimulus package wasn't going to happen. So as Democrats are scrambling to kind of compromise on a deal, President Biden is trying to push things forward more quickly by telling them, hey, this is what we should do. This is President Biden's framework. Use this to create your framework in the House to then pass it to the Senate and see if they agree, if that kind of makes sense. Basically, it's a new deal that President Biden is offering to Congress, but they're probably still going to make some changes. And again, this is a framework for the deal. They're still going to have to go ahead and write the details afterwards. So we're probably still a few weeks out from having the stimulus package actually done, right? So that's a little confusing, but I hope that kind of makes sense. President Biden is basically giving Congress a new starting point to try and build their framework off of, because basically progressives and conservative Democrats were so far apart from each other that compromising was basically impossible, right? So they had this $3.5 trillion plan. Then we had Joe Manchin wanting basically half of that. So now Biden has come out and said, hey guys, this is what's realistic. Biden is saying, I've talked to progressives, I've talked to moderates. This is what I think is possible to happen as far as compromising between both sides. So use this as your framework to get the deal done, right? So this comes in at $1.75 trillion. And again, Biden went down just this morning to Congress and presented this framework in front of the House. So let's quickly take a look and see exactly what this framework includes. And again, this is just a framework. It's not a detailed list of every single thing, but it's a framework of what he wants to include in this package. Now, for the purposes of this video, we're going to quickly go over the framework, but we're going to focus on what this means for seniors and what this means for the $1,400 stimulus check that some Democrats are trying to include for seniors. Remember, Bernie Sanders announced a $1,000 stimulus check for seniors, which would most likely apply to everyone on Social Security, SSI, and SSDI. Then we had a Senior Citizens League group say, hey, let's increase that to $1,400. Then President Biden came out and said, you know what, it might be as low as $800. So we're kind of waiting to see, hey, will this stimulus check be included at all? And if it is, will it be $800, $1,000, or $1,400, right? So let's quickly go through this framework and see what President Biden said in regards to stimulus for seniors and specifically the $1,400 stimulus check. But first, his framework includes a topic called children and caregiving. So he wants to include free and universal preschool for all children who are 3 and 4 years old. He also wants to expand access to high quality and affordable childcare to 20 million children per year with funding for 6 years. He also wants to permanently improve Medicaid coverage to include home care services for seniors and people with disabilities, which would make the most transformative investments in access to home care in 40 years. So this home care coverage is huge. I know a lot of seniors are on Medicare and Medicaid. So basically, if you're on Medicaid as well, he wants to provide more funding for home health care services so seniors and those who are disabled, so people like on SSI and SSDI, can have free access to home health care coverage so they don't have to go to nursing homes and they can just honestly get the care that they deserve, right? So that'd be a huge benefit for seniors and for those who are disabled. Now, he also wants to expand the child tax credit, which pays $300 per month, although it's not clear exactly how long he would want to expand that. Now, he also is including funding to combat the climate crisis and combat climate change, okay? So it looks like it's about $500 billion for that. So it's obviously a huge priority for the Biden administration. Now, as far as specifically for healthcare, he wants to lower premiums for 9 million Americans who buy insurance through Obamacare, okay? So basically, he is trying to provide funding to strengthen the Obamacare program. Now, lowering costs for the middle class. They want to provide $150 billion to expand access to affordable housing. The plan would allow the construction, rehab, and improvements of more than 1 million affordable homes. This would be huge for seniors and people on SSI and SSDI. I know not most, but a lot of people who watch my videos, they comment that they're on Section 8 vouchers, they live in affordable housing, but quite frankly, the conditions are terrible, or they have to wait in a huge wait list just to be placed in an affordable home. Now, this would create 1 million more affordable homes across this country, which would help tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of seniors and those who are disabled in this country. So, providing funding for affordable housing, although it's not a direct stimulus check, would directly help seniors and those who are disabled. So, that's really, really good. Now, he also wants to extend the expanded earned income tax credit for about 17 million low-wage workers. Now, I've talked about this in my videos as well. If you work part-time as someone who's retired, this earned income tax credit could actually put about $1,000 extra in your pocket every single year. And that is something that was recently expanded to include seniors. Previously, you had to be under 65 years old to qualify for that credit. Now, if you're over 65, you can work part-time, still get Social Security benefits without being penalized if you work part-time. Use this earned income tax credit to put an extra $1,000 in your pocket every single year. So they want to extend that and basically make that permanent. Now, tax reform. This involves how they're going to pay for this stimulus package, and this is one of the biggest disagreements that still remains, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, the framework that President Biden proposed will impose a 15% minimum tax on profits of corporations that make more than $1 billion in profit every single year. So basically the problem this is going to address is when we have companies like Amazon or Bank of America or Tesla who make billions of dollars in profits, but then pay 0% in taxes because there's so many tax loopholes. This would create a minimum tax. So no matter how many tax credits or tax loopholes you can find, you're always going to pay a minimum of 15% tax if you make over $1 billion per year. So that would only affect the really huge companies that make so much money every single year, and this would be used to fund the stimulus package. Now, remember yesterday we announced that President Biden wanted to do a billionaire tax, right? And that was going to solve all the problems. It was going to pay for the stimulus package. Then Joe Manchin came out and said, not so sure I'm on board with that. For some reason, Joe Manchin not quite on board with making billionaires pay their fair share to provide a respectable life for seniors and those who are disabled, right? I mean, when we're talking about doing $1,400 stimulus checks, it's hard to fathom why Joe Manchin doesn't want billionaires to pay their fair share in order to provide stimulus checks for seniors. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, right? So then President Biden has came out with a new compromise, and this would be a tax specifically on those who make over $10 million per year. So this would impose a surtax on the income of multimillionaires and billionaires at a 5% rate of income above $10 million per year, and then an additional 3% surtax on income above $25 million per year. Now, the White House is stressing that nobody who makes less than $400,000 per year will have their taxes raised. Now, it's unclear if Joe Manchin is going to be on board with this, and then it's also unclear if liberals like Bernie Sanders are going to be okay with not creating the larger tax on billionaires, right? Because this 5% tax rate is not as strong as the one they wanted to put on billionaires. So it's not as strong, but it applies to people making more than $10 million per year. So it would apply to more people. So it could potentially be a good compromise, but we'll have to wait and see how Democrats respond. This framework, this new deal that President Biden has offered, was literally just announced like 30 minutes before I made this video. So this is really up-to-date news, right? So that is kind of the general framework of this package. Now, specifically for seniors and the $1,400 stimulus check, if we go back to the healthcare section, it says expand Medicare to include hearing services. Okay, so this is a huge, huge deal. Obviously, because it's going to help millions of seniors who need hearing aids. But secondly, if you notice, it doesn't include dental care or vision care. Now remember, Bernie Sanders has been huge on extending this to include hearing, vision, and dental care. And now according to Biden's new framework, it only includes hearing care. Now this is a huge, huge deal because recently, a couple of days ago, Bernie Sanders said that expanding Medicare and including a stimulus check for seniors was a red line in the sand, and he would not approve the stimulus package unless those things were included, right? So now we're going to have to wait and see. Is Bernie Sanders going to be okay? I mean, obviously he won't be okay with it, but is he going to be willing to accept an expansion of Medicare that only includes hearing care but not vision or dental? We'll have to wait and see, right? Now, secondly, is this going to affect the $1,400 stimulus check? Because Bernie Sanders' kind of reason for giving the stimulus check was to help cover medical costs until Medicare was completely expanded, because experts said that it would take a few years to fully expand Medicare. For whatever reason, for the bureaucracy of the whole thing, these things take years to happen, right? So Bernie Sanders said, okay, we'll expand Medicare to include vision, dental, and hearing care. And in the meantime, since it's going to take so long to implement, we'll do a $1,400 stimulus check for seniors. That was Bernie Sanders' plan, right? Well, now President Biden only wants to include hearing, so not including dental and vision care. So what is Bernie Sanders' response going to be? Is he going to double down and say, yep, you know what, that's fine, we'll just do hearing care, but we need that stimulus check? Because quite frankly, President Biden did not address the stimulus check in his framework. But remember, this is just a framework. This isn't a detailed deal. This is a framework for Congress to work off of, right? So he didn't exclude the stimulus check, but he didn't explicitly include it, right? So, I mean, the fact that he's leaving out dental and vision care is actually another stronger reason to include a stimulus check for seniors, because if you're not covering dental and vision, it's just an even bigger reason why seniors and those who are disabled need a stimulus check, right? So what we're hoping is that Bernie Sanders reads this framework and says, you know what? This is just another reason why seniors need stimulus check. This is just another reason why those who are disabled need a stimulus check, because we're not going to have vision and dental care in Medicare. We're only going to have a hearing expansion, right? So people are going to need that money to pay for medical expenses, on top of the fact that they need that money to pay their rent, to put food on the table, just to try and live in a retirement and a life of dignity. So this is the framework. President Biden was really urgent about getting this framework out for this new deal that he's proposing, because today he's actually leaving for Europe. They're having huge meetings across Europe where they're going to talk about climate change. Kind of the U.S. is supposed to be a leader in the climate change initiatives, but now we're having a problem where Joe Manchin doesn't really want to get on board with those climate change initiatives. So President Biden was trying to get this framework in place so he can then go to Europe and say, you know what, this is what we're going to do. This is our framework. But guys, I mean, quite honestly, we're going to have to wait and see how Congress responds. Is this framework going to be largely accepted? Are conservatives going to be okay with the increase on taxing millionaires? Are progressives going to be okay with the fact that dental and vision care might not be included in this package? And are they also going to be okay with the fact that they've taken a lot of things out? I mean, Biden didn't include paid family leave, right? That's a huge thing. Originally, progressives wanted to have 12 weeks of paid family leave for those who have babies when they have kids. It was lowered to 4 weeks, and now this framework didn't even include that. Now again, that doesn't mean it's excluded, but it just means that it's not like a mandatory thing that President Biden put in his framework. So there's still a lot of debate that has to happen on this package. Now, Pelosi said that she wants to have a framework done by the end of this week. Now, with today being Thursday, she was hoping to have that actually done by yesterday, but by the latest, she wanted it to be done by this coming Friday, right? And then on top of that, she wanted to bring the infrastructure bill to a vote. Remember, we still have that physical infrastructure stimulus vote to happen to build roads, bridges, and highways and create millions of good-paying jobs. Now, there is still a lot of agreement to happen and a lot of compromise that has to get done before the stimulus package can be approved. Now, this clip from CNBC does a good job of kind of explaining where progressives and moderates still disagree, including tax cuts, and the fact that Pelosi wants to bring this physical stimulus package to a vote this week. So let's quickly take a look and see what they had to say.
This morning, President Biden's planning to visit Capitol Hill this morning to build support for his economic agenda before he leaves for the G20. Elon Moore joins us now with more. Good morning.
Well, good morning, Andrew. NBC News has confirmed that President Biden will announce a new framework for the social spending package as Democrats search for direction over what should be in it and how to pay for it. Now, several key issues were still in flux as of last night, including paid family and medical leave. It had already been slashed from 12 to 4 weeks, and now even that was in jeopardy amid opposition from Senator Joe Manchin. And the tax provisions, those are proving problematic too. Manchin and many Democrats in the House were skeptical of the new billionaire's income tax. One lawmaker told me he's fine with taxing the rich, but he doesn't want to soak them. Now, instead, the House is pushing a 3% surtax on millionaires. That would apply to income above $10 million, and it's expected to raise about $130 billion over the course of a decade. Then there are the new IRS reporting requirements for personal bank accounts. 21 moderates in the House announced last night that they oppose this idea and want a more targeted approach. But this has been a priority for the Treasury Department, and Senators Mark Warner, Tom Carper, and Angus King have been adamant that it should stay in the final package. And I was told that Democrats were trying to rework the language to focus on those making more than $400,000 a year. So if the party can rally around the president's new plan, that could pave the way for a vote on the infrastructure bill. Remember that one? Potentially as soon as today. But guys, of course, there is still a lot to be decided.
All right, so we have a framework. We have President Biden creating a new framework for a deal which is more realistic. $3.5 trillion ended up being just unrealistic with all these moderates wanting to cut it down. Now, progressives are going to be upset because there's a lot of things have been cut out. But this is kind of the new starting line. Hey, start here. Use this as your framework. This is realistic. President Biden is telling both sides, hey, I've talked to progressives. I've talked to moderates. This is a realistic framework of what we can get done. Now, with that said, both sides are going to be fighting for things. Progressives are going to want to add some more things. Moderates are going to want to take some things out and might not be happy with those tax increases on billionaires. So we're going to have to wait and see how Congress responds. Will they largely rally behind this package and get this done in the next couple of weeks? Or will things continue to be delayed as Democrats continue to argue over how to pay for this package and continue to argue as to whether or not they're going to include a stimulus check for seniors? Just to recap, Bernie Sanders wants to do a $1,000 stimulus check for seniors. Then we have some groups pushing for a $1,400 stimulus check for seniors. And then President Biden said it could be as small as $800. And then again, of course, we have people like Joe Manchin who really don't want to have stimulus checks included at all. So guys, with that said, Pelosi is having a press conference in just a couple of hours. So we should have a huge update when that comes out. So don't forget to subscribe. And I'm going to keep you posted as things develop on these next two stimulus packages, Social Security changes, and daily news updates as well.